Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Enneagram Entrepreneur Interviews. I believe we are on week 15. I have an awesome guest today. This is Ellen Keller. She leads with an Enneagram Type 9, which is a peacemaker or mediator. She has a law firm in Cincinnati, Keller, Barrett, and Higgins law practice. And the reason that I struggle to remember that is because I call you guys KBH lawyers. Do you go by KBH?
You
I
know,
think it's kind of catchy. So Ellen is an estate planning attorney in Cincinnati, Ohio, with her practice, KBH Lawyers, and leads with the Enneagram Type 9. So we are going to talk a little bit about that today. So welcome to the show. And if you'll briefly introduce yourself, your Enneagram type, where you're from, and more about your business.
Great. All right. So you already said I'm Ellen Keller, I think. So I'm Ellen Keller of Keller, Barrett, and Higgins, LLC. And I am a Type 9. So as far as who I am and what my business is, so stop me if this is too much information or not enough information. I'm an estate planning attorney, transactional. I'm sure that comes into my need to mediate and harmonize. There's no way I could be a courtroom attorney. We can get into that later. But so I'm an estate planning attorney and a probate attorney, which go hand in hand, because if you're writing someone's will, then you might need to help them through the probate process as well. Keller, Barrett, and Higgins. So Keller, Barrett, and Higgins has been through a few iterations, but it was started originally in 2007. Original partners are Tina and I, and we initially had a different partner, also female though. It's been all female all the time. And then Amy Higgins joined us in 2011. So that's great. And we've got the three ladies who are the Keller, the Barrett, and the Higgins, and we all do different areas of law. I do the estate planning and probate, and then Tina does family law, and Amy is a real estate attorney. So.
Awesome. And I love women practices. I feel like there's something to be said, especially for women in estate planning or family law that are clients coming to a place where they feel safe discussing things with other women. There's something really comforting about that. And of course, the knowledge of a woman-owned law practice for anyone is helpful, but just there's something that speaks to me about someone going through something that might be a little more challenging, working with somebody that is more identifiable to them. So I think that that's great. And with estate planning, that's the area that I'm the most familiar with, is estate planning and probate. So we're kind of kindred spirits in that way. And I'm an 8, but I think that speaks to my 9 wing. I'm not a big fan of the adversarial process either. Transactional sounds nice when working with clients. But let's talk a little bit about that and what that looks like for you. With for the folks that are new to understanding what estate planning and probate is, if you could just share a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. So obviously you're familiar, and so I was forgetting that other people might need to know. But estate planning, it sounds very fancy, but really everyone needs to do it, because what it means is you're planning for the fact that someone is going to receive your assets when you pass. And so it's making a comprehensive, cohesive plan for that to help your heirs both receive your assets easily, but also more of them, because you're wanting to avoid some of the costs that come from transition. And so estate planning might be, part of it is putting together things like your power of attorney, because if you're incapacitated, you need somebody to be handling your affairs. But it also means when you die, you do want somebody to be able to be in charge and distribute the assets per your wishes. So if you don't do a will, what happens is the state gives you a will. There's a statute of descent and distribution. And so they'll say, well, we assume that because you're married and all your kids are your spouse's kids as well, that you want everything to go to your spouse. Or if you're married and all your kids are not also your spouse's kids, they are going to give a percentage to your kids and a percentage to your spouse. And so it might not follow what you actually want to happen. So your will is what says what you want to happen. A lot of times people also do trusts, which is almost like a will alternative, but it's a private document that accomplishes those wishes, hopefully without going through the court process, for people that are interested in avoiding the court process. Court is probate court. not evil people, not a bad place. It's just that it's a court process. And so some people want to avoid that because there's costs associated with it, both to the court, fees and whatnot, and then also to the attorney that would have to help you navigate the court process. So, people often, a big misunderstanding is, oh, I'm going to do a will so that I can avoid probate. But that is not the case. A will is actually just instructions to a probate court. So if you want to avoid probate, there's things to do, but the will doesn't help you do that. The other big thing that a will does that most people are aware of is, of course, naming the guardian should something happen to them. So
I'm so glad you called that out. Lots of mamas watch these, so that's really great. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So you name a guardian for, it's where you, and I'm sorry, I hope you're not seeing that. My phone is trying to ring. I will decline that call. Anyway, so you're naming a guardian, but what you're doing is really nominating a guardian, because it's still up to the court. The court has the jurisdiction to name who your guardian will be for your minor children or incapacitated children. And so you're saying who you would prefer. And of course, that goes a long way. That's a huge weight. It's not like the court, is thinking we know better than mom or we know better than dad, but it's just a nomination.
Yes, I think there's a lot of deference given to that. And so that's a great call out. A lot of people think wills are just about assets, but really, if you have minor children, it's extremely important to understand that even if you didn't have an enormous amount of assets, if you have minor children, that in and of itself is a reason to have a will. So thank you for sharing that and just clarifying that. I happen to love probate court. I love the process. That's what I do in my little side work. And the reason I like it, it can get litigious. I don't get myself involved with that. Typically, like, there are attorneys that manage that. And, but just the process of helping somebody through something that is foreign, difficult, and as they're going through something that may be difficult for them, I think it's a very comforting role to play as a probate attorney. So I think that speaks well to the peacemaker, mediator type for sure. So speaking of, let's talk a little bit about the Enneagram. How long have you been working with the Enneagram, and where did you hear and learn about it?
Sure. So I think I'm more of like a baby Enneagram person. I haven't, I know that you can get really into it and it's so helpful. It's kind of like any type of self-help you're doing where you're trying to understand yourself and why you do the things you do and can you do them better. But I heard about it from my sister. My younger sister also lives in town, a local teacher and mom. And she started talking about her, number and saying, I think you're, everyone likes to kind of call out what they think somebody else might be.
Right.
So anyway, I just, I did a few of the tests. I didn't rely on just one because I don't know if it's part of my personality type, but I always suspect that perhaps I'm answering the questions in a way that I think someone else might want me to answer them, or that how I'm being perceived. And so I'm like, maybe that's not right. And so, but I took it a few times and it always comes out to be a 9. Of course, there's some other aspects to the personality. So just been through it. Where I would say I am in it, though, is I really haven't gotten into the practices that would help me. And, I've gotten more into the diagnosing of what I am, but I haven't necessarily gotten into, knowing that I'm this, what can I do to kind of maximize life, maximize productivity and happiness and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, I think, to your point, so tests in and of themselves are only about 54 to 80% accurate. So I love that you proceeded with caution. Having talked to you before and gotten to know you a little bit, the type 9 does seem to be something very identifiable with you. And I think that where you are using the tool is it's created that self-awareness, right? And so just having that knowledge opens up the idea of self-awareness. And I think I say this in almost every episode, but like for those watching, the thing about the Enneagram that's so powerful is it opens your mind up to the truth that not everybody thinks the way that you do. And so once we can identify that, it's so much easier to have empathy and communicate with others, realizing that there's compassion there that maybe they're not receiving the information the way that you're intending for it to come out because they don't think the way that you do. I can't tell you how many times I've asked, like, prior to this and even still after, because I'm human, but like, why would they do that? Well, the answer is because they don't think like you. They don't think like I did. You know, they did it because they think differently and they thought that was the thing to do. So anyway, that being said, how about the journey to becoming an entrepreneur, to starting your law firm?
Yeah. So, I don't know. I often joke with people that I would have made someone a really good executive assistant. Like, there's a part of my personality that is very, like, I would rather just help someone else be good and great and do great things, and, just make sure they get to their meetings on time and, everything's filed appropriately and all that kind of stuff. But that was not to be. I worked at I would call it a small to medium sized law firm right after school, which I think is valuable. You've been there. You get out of law school and you literally know nothing other than how
you don't know how to be a lawyer.
Nope.
You know how to take the bar.
Yeah. You know how to take the bar exam, you know how to find information, you know how to think, which is good. Usually know how to talk, but you might have known that beforehand.
Right.
So anyway, you get out of law school and, there are some brave souls that throw out their shingle and just start practicing. But I was not one of those. And I worked for someone that was doing mostly transactional law. It was, heavy on business law. And then also I was kind of tasked with starting the estate planning. So it was learn as you go. The only estate, I'd done a basic estate planning class, and I'd taken a lot of tax classes. I was kind of a tax nerd in law school. So a lot of tax.
Oh, God,
stuff.
love you.
Yeah. And so started that, and I really, really liked it. And the owner at that firm, it was called the Wolf Practice, was she was an entrepreneur. I mean, and very much, I think, kind of instilled an entrepreneurial spirit in us, maybe to her detriment, because then I left and started a firm. But, that really didn't have to do
with your colleague, right?
So she left first, it just happened. She left first and joined another firm, and I left maybe 6 months to a year later. And then we were like, what are we doing? We can do this. We actually do know how to do this now. We've been, lawyers before. We kind of learned how to do all the different tasks, from working at a firm. The three of us at the time all had different skills. I kind of like doing marketing type stuff and, just the kind of things that not all lawyers do like to do. So I kind of fulfilled that role. We had another person that was fulfilling more of the financial type role. And we just came together and formed, at that time, it was my maiden name. It was called Barrett, Beers and Powell, and in Pleasant Ridge. And we just started. We all chose to go on our own. And I think, and you've experienced this too, once you've experienced working for yourself, there's a certain type of personality that it's really, really hard to go back to working for somebody else again. And so even though at some
maybe
point
you have an 8-wing.
I think maybe, yeah, I was reading up on those. And so, it would have been really, really difficult, because, and I lucked also into the fact that estate planning, my particular area of law, is very family friendly. I did not choose that area thinking, oh, someday this will be great when I want to spend more time with my kids, or when I, maybe want to work, less than 40 hours a week or something like that. But so I totally lucked into that, because at that point I was still, maybe I wasn't single, but I didn't have kids yet. So I just wasn't thinking for that purpose. And so started the firm and kind of never looked back. And there's certain aspects to business ownership, not just lawyering, that I really love. When I don't want to think about difficult tasks, that's when I do Instagramming or fix my website, or, that's when because those things are fun for me, and so I typically do the things that are a little bit easier when I don't want to do the difficult things that I have to think about as far as lawyering, or the harder tasks or things I've been dreading doing, just because we all have those in our businesses that we're like, oh, for some reason, I just don't want to do that particular plan or that particular task. And, that's when I have the fun, and I do the website, and I look at the different pictures and I post them, and so that's stuff I like. And I think that I wouldn't get that creative aspect as well if I didn't own my own business, because there's not a lot of law firms that are like, sure, yes, do this estate plan, and then on the side also do our website. I mean, that doesn't happen. So
right.
Excited about that.
So I love that. Okay, so you said a handful of things that stuck out to me with regard to your Enneagram type that I just want to go back and examine for a minute. This tickles me. Okay, so first of all, one of the other attorneys that I've interviewed was on the Enneagram mom interviews, and she was a type 6 tax attorney. So the type 9 moves into the 6, right? When they are, I believe, I can't remember if it's stress or support, but they do move into the 6. And so when you move into the 6, it makes me think of my type 6 friend, the tax attorney, because taxes are so rule-based. They're really not litigious. It's very much by the book. I mean, they can get litigious, but they're not meant for that. They're meant as a code, right? And the code is such a much more regimented and safe area. So that also kind of matches that 9 need. But your role in and of itself kind of brings peace, the peacemaker. It brings peace to people in terms of that future planning, asset management. And then my favorite thing that you said was talking about the creative aspect of entrepreneurship and the fun stuff, the social media management and so forth. So 9 can be prone to inertia or procrastination. And that is to avoid having to do something hard, right? Whatever that might be, conflict, or the hard thing that they really need to be doing. And so what I love about what you said is this is a form of, I wouldn't call it procrastination, but this is actually really evolved. You're being productive. You're doing action that is not ineffective to support your business, but gives you that outlet to put space between the hard thing until you're ready for it. And so that's actually a really healthy thing, because the 9 defense mechanism is narcotization, which essentially means you're finding something to numb yourself from having to deal with the hard stuff. So this is a really healthy way to manage the hard stuff in a good pace that works for you and be productive in your business. So good job. I love that. And I think that's a great example for other 9s to think about. What are the outlets that you can have that are productive action that can help you keep the momentum going and also allow you to prepare for the challenging things you've got to check off your list as well. So very good. I love that. So, and that kind of dovetails right into our next question, which is the core motivation of the 9, the need for harmony and peace. Pretty much at all times. How does that come into play in your business, both the strengths and the challenges?
Sure. So, I mean, I think you already mentioned the fact that just my area of law very much is about encouraging others to have peace and harmony in the family, and I think that's a strength, because when people are talking about, it's an individual plan. So when someone comes and says, we go through what they prefer, obviously there's things that are recommended and there's things that are not recommended. And the things that are not recommended are typically things that are going to cause discord, right? You never want to write a plan that's going to increase discord, because that increases bad feelings, but also costs. And so, part of my job is to encourage people to have not just harmony now, but harmony later, which, takes some, forethought and whatnot. If they're putting older brother as the trustee that would be in charge of younger brother's trust until younger brother's 25 and older brother's only say 5 years older. I'm like, do you see how that would work though? The younger brother will have to ask the older brother for money. Is that a good dynamic to have? Your kids, I don't, is that really what you want? And so we'll talk about that. So I think that's a strength in being able to encourage people to think about what could cause the harmony. Then also there's a harmony just in having a plan at all. Right. When you don't have a plan, people in grief are oftentimes they're just not themselves, and they're going to cause issues that wouldn't be there if they could just follow, a list of instructions, right?
Yeah.
So, if everything's, up in the air and they don't know, what mom would have wanted in that particular situation, then people might be arguing. Whereas if it's written down, they don't have to do that. So, but as far as being a business owner goes, there's definitely parts of life that are just going to have, there are going to be hard things or conflict or people that say, that are unhappy with your work. I mean, I can't tell you how upsetting it is when someone is unhappy with my work. I mean, that's the ultimate conflict, is when somebody is unhappy with you or your performance or what you're providing.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, I mean, if you're a retail store, it's simple. You've sold a pair of pants and they have a defect and they bring it back, and it's not as personal. But with estate planning, or, even any lawyering, it's a service business. And so it's a much more personal thing when someone is unhappy. And so I think to kind of deal with that, I kind of put in place just parameters as far as like, this is what happens, keeping in contact with clients, making sure that everyone's trying to be as, clear as possible about what to expect. Because usually it's just someone's expectations not being met is usually an issue. It's really nothing more than, oh, I thought this was going to be done in 2 weeks and it took 4, and someone's very upset. So dealing with that, making sure I have things in place to remind myself to do them. And this is things that I've been doing this for like 15 or more years now. And so this has taken a long time for me to learn, and I'm still not always good at it. Well,
the laws change every year. You've got, it's very nuanced. It's not as simple as people might assume. It's the templates, there are templates like online, but those are not nearly as effective as actually working with an attorney who understands the nuances and the changes of the laws. It can be complex.
Yes, it can. So as far as the production of the documents themselves, just having a plan in place to do that and make sure everyone's, on the same page. But then there's, other aspects to the business. There's the billing, and, that's a pain point with people when you're charging money for a service, which we have to do because we do this for money, not just for fun, or because we enjoy it, which we do. But so when people have to pay for a service, it's like, you go in and you get your teeth cleaned, and then you get the bill, and sometimes it's more than you expected or what have you. And it causes you stress, which might mean that you aren't as nice as you normally would be. And so I have to deal with that a lot too, with unhappy people with, bills and whatnot. And, my tendency is to be very, understanding on that kind of thing. And I think you need to be, but there comes a point when you do have to, wear your pants and say, I'm sorry, the service was provided and here is the bill and let's work out a payment plan. But no, we can't just not pay it. So, there's kind of hats I have to wear where that's a little bit uncomfortable. And I don't know if sometimes it's not serving me as well as far as me giving more time away than I should. I do tend to, and I think the mama bear helped with that. So when you become a mom, suddenly your time is much more, it's spread much more thin. And so the thought is, okay, I could do that for free for that person because they were upset about such and such. But that means I spent 4 hours away from my babies that I could have spent with them. And while I'm willing to cheat myself, I'm not willing to cheat them. Right. And so I think I became a little better on that financial end of, not selling myself short after I became a mom. So,
it's so interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's just, as far as strengths and weaknesses, I think the constant need to accommodate for people, you do have to remind yourself, okay, I can't accommodate myself out of, making a living, and I can't accommodate myself out of, time for myself and time for my family. And that's hard sometimes because you do want to do things for people to meet their needs and make them happy and to help. So
yeah, no, I totally get that. And I love that you realize that about yourself, but the strengthening really came in when, with the addition of children, and it's very relatable, because we do, unfortunately there are 24 hours in a day, and we also require sleep and eating and a little bit of self-care and mothering and work and running a business. So at some point people need to pay us for our good work. So that's a great example, though, of a uncomfortable conversation for a 9. Thank you for articulating that. And then, of course, yes, your strengths speak to helping people through the process, recognizing potential conflict in the outcome of the design, and really walking your clients through that to preempt any issues that could become bigger down the road. So all very, very helpful. Thank you. So would you like to share, is there anything, actually, I almost skipped a question. So just generally speaking, understanding the Enneagram as a whole, how long ago did you say you kind of began to understand your type?
Probably about 1.5 years.
Okay. So with that being said, once you did understand your type, did you see a difference in how it impacted your day-to-day work and your role in your business?
Yes, I definitely. So I think I'd come to somewhat of an understanding of the over accommodating part of my personality, but really only saw it as a negative up until the Enneagram. At that point, I was like, oh, so it's not that there's like bad personality traits. They're just bad if you kind of go the way, there's 2 ways of going, that, it's great to be accommodating in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's about being giving, and it's just about remembering. So anyway, what the Enneagram helped me do is kind of frame the personality traits that I'd already discovered, just because, I've been around for more than 40 years. Right. Frame it in a way that saw it as it could be a strength, depending on how I looked at it, and also depending on how I managed to kind of reframe and center on the things that could be helpful to me. So knowing that I tend to over accommodate, or knowing that I tend to avoid conflict, what does that mean for me? What does that mean? I need to start my day with an intention. So after the Enneagram, I started trying to just pick out a few tasks that I know, if I knew I would accomplish them in that day, I would feel much better about myself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So not getting distracted by too many different, pulls on my time. So even though, I still have the same amount of pulls on my time from business and family and whatnot, which are not bad things. It's good that you're aware of the needs that other people have of you. It's like, okay, but I really just want to, make my bed and clean and cut all the fruit I bought for the week, and, do one estate plan today, and if I do those things, then I feel good. So
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. And I think to your point, what the great thing about the Enneagram is, it really gets to the truth, and the truth has the light and the dark, and it's all the same thing. It's polar, it's opposite ends of the same pole. So our greatest strength is also going to be our biggest challenge. And it shifts the way we behave and respond from our subconscious to our conscious. So now we're recognizing when the things we do are actually in service of our lives, and when they're just responding to stimuli in a reactive way and not in service. So yeah, I think that's really powerful. Is there anything specific about your business that you'd like to share to encourage people? Yeah, go ahead.
So, with lawyers, we don't do things like buy one, get one free. I think it's actually not allowed.
You don't?
Yes, we always need to lift up the profession of the law. So, it's not that I have specials or anything like that, but, I do encourage people to consider smaller shop attorneys. It can be a lot more reasonable to use attorneys that are, have a smaller law firm. We have lower overhead and things like that. So considering using that. So when you are seeking your own attorney, which needs to be your choice, you need to find the attorney that personality wise and skills wise has everything that you need from them, because it's a very personal relationship. But check out our website, check out our Facebook. It's KBH Lawyers, like we mentioned earlier. I tried to keep the same handle on all of them so it would be easy. In Instagram, of course. So but yeah, we don't have specials, but there's never a bad time to get started on your estate planning. Never a bad time. I have to say summer is often busy for me. And I don't know if it's the same for you, Whitney, but I think people start thinking, oh, I'm going on a plane, or I'm going on vacation. And I meant to do this for some time. And suddenly it just becomes, more present in their minds. But also don't feel like you'll be jinxed if you do your estate plan. I do a lot of knocking on wood, not that that does anything, but everyone needs an estate plan, and you can put it in the drawer and have peace of mind that you took care of it after that. So
it's good practice, and it's supporting a woman-owned law practice to come to you, which I am going to advocate all day long. With that being said, real quick, for people that might be interested in setting an appointment, do you typically through your website do an intake through your website that they complete, or do they just set an appointment and do an intake consult one-on-one? What does that look like for folks?
Sure. So we haven't once mentioned COVID, which is exciting, but COVID times did result in a different way of doing business for me. I know.
Yeah,
but
it's changed everything. No, you're right. Go ahead.
Change how you do business. But honestly, even once, and I do hope we get to a time shortly where people are feeling much more comfortable meeting in person. But for now, I'm suggesting we meet virtually first. And so I use Calendly. I don't know if you've heard of that, but Calendly, Calendly.com/Ellen Keller. And you can find that link on my website. Or if you email me, I'll send it to you. But you can sign up for a virtual appointment. And if you sign up for a virtual appointment, then I do send you an intake form, because of course it's very helpful when you're having a meeting with someone to have some really basic information about, family situation, some real basics on assets and things like that.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I think we covered the last question, where people can go to find you. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. I think that this is extremely important information. My audience is predominantly women. I love educating women about how we take care of ourselves by managing these important aspects of our lives that we don't often think about. So, and also just discussing being a type 9 and practicing law, and how it's very possible. And there's a lot of great avenues for folks that maybe aren't necessarily interested in pursuing an adversarial career, but would like to practice law. So thank you for sharing that as well. And I really, really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome, Whitney. It was a pleasure. Pleasure was mine.
Thank you.